Hi, I am Lonita Cook, a Kansas City-based film critic. Thank you for joining us for Delcina's Voice from Stage to Screen, a conversation presented by Mama.film as part of their Sundance Film Festival community programming. While we intended to gather in Lawrence, Kansas, where this story has roots, that will have to wait until spring. I am delighted to be joined by the woman of the hour, who we revere as a world-renowned opera singer and love as a KU grad and beautiful representative of our great state of Kansas, Miss Delcina Stevenson, and to be joined by co-founder of Sheena May Stories and creative development lead on the limited bio series Delcina's Voice, Miss Angela Kenyon Davis. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Yes. All right. So they've come to talk to me, to Mama Film, and most significantly to you about how they'll bring Delcina's story from Coffeyville, Kansas to our screens, homes, and hearts. Please welcome Delcina Stevenson and Angela Davis. All right, so I am going to ask you some usual questions, but some that might sound a little strange. So just answer in whatever way you interpret, okay? Okay, so my first question is about power. What does it take to draw in the breath and to color and sustain a note?
It takes a command of breath. And I do sort of a yoga breath. I used to do that. I don't do it as often now as I did when I was younger, but I used to do it every day. And it's a certain way that you build up your lungs. And I think when I go to the doctor now, and he never believes, he always has to do it twice to check my lungs because he doesn't believe that they're that healthy. He says, wow, you have healthy lungs. So it's paid off.
Paid off. So This is a more broad interpretation of that question. What is your source of power?
Well, the God within. I have this God within that monitors everything, or maybe is doing it. How about that?
Oh, so you as the conduit.
Yes. I'm just the vessel.
I love that. So has that source of power evolved over time?
Yes. I think I grew up in the church. My mother was Methodist, my father was Baptist. And I always had questions then about what's the difference, why, what is it, but then I grew up and then when I went to, after a lifetime experiences, I moved to New York, and that's when I sort of started, I guess you would say, delving into what my beliefs were and what questions I had to ask. And I went through a lot of, it's too long a story to tell. I went through a lot of tasting every religion, I had all kinds of friends, and so. Yeah, it's a journey, it's a life.
I think that's something that a lot of creatives do, where we question and we sample and we learn and we kind of gauge our own identity based on that education.
So you don't grow if you don't question. If you just believe everything that's there, you don't grow. So.
Absolutely. All right. So before we hop into the career and the training and the whole thing, let's take it back to childhood in Kansas. Tell me about, set the stage for me. Tell me about the geography, the environment. Was it lots of rolling plains and big cottonwood trees?
It's on the just on the corner of, there's 3 states, Missouri, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. And I never went to one of them when I was younger. I never went to any of them. I think I must have been in my teenage years before I went. We were just like 5 miles from Oklahoma. Never went across that line, So it's a town. It was about 25,000 people. There were 2 Black schools, great schools. And my mother taught at one, and I went to another, which was near my home. There was a school right across from where we lived that I couldn't go to. And but now that I think about it, I mean, I think it was the most wonderful thing in the world, because this teacher that I had just, she just she didn't dote on us. She just told us, you have to be good. You have to be better than, and I grew up with that. So it was
better than what? Because I know that a lot of times when we are growing up, particularly as Black individuals, but Black women, we have to be the cream of the crop just to get a little taste. So better than what?
Well, better than the other white students or the white schools. Our grades had to be up there with them, because they always compared them. And we always were. So she did her job. She did her job well. So, yeah.
In your youth, in your hometown, was there a place where you felt safe? And by safe, I mean a place where you felt like you could be completely yourself.
I think my mother and father instilled that. I didn't feel never felt any, negative feelings there while I was there. And because we couldn't be in certain things, my mother especially, she started a Boy Scout and a Girl Scout for us, and she had a choir, she was a musician herself. She started a choir. She started a drum and bugle corps, because they had, at Coffeyville at the white school, they had this famous drum and bugle corps. So she started one for the Black girls, and I have pictures of it, and it was a wonderful, wonderful time. She just said, "Well, hey, we'll just start our own," And I remember selling all kinds of things, trying to get uniforms for all of us girls, and it's just a wonderful childhood,
Yeah, we know you as a pioneer, but your mama is where you got that pioneering spirit from.
That's right. She was strong. She was a strong woman. I really appreciate that now. When I was coming up, I always thought, she would only let us wear shoes that were. We only bought one pair of shoes at Easter, and they always had to be very, sturdy shoes. And I'm really appreciative of that now, because I have no bunions, I have no corns. We're in good shape.
Hey, our feet take us everywhere we go. So it's important to have good feet.
I don't have any problem.
And so, Angela, let's get you in the conversation. So you are telling this story, and I know a big part of the story is travel out from Kansas, physically, geographically, but also spiritual travel. How do you plan to capture that part of the story in the docuseries?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. It really ties into your earlier question to Delcina about her faith and her foundation, at home with her mother, and that initial foundation and guidance that she had growing up. She does travel from a place of calamity, of conflict, of trying to move forward out of a situation that is no longer supportive for her and her family. And through that process, she comes back to everything that initially nurtured her, and reconnects with that spiritual side and with that strength that her mother instilled in her. She's able to draw upon that herself and find a way to, soar, basically, find herself through that journey of reconnection.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So I also made a move from Kansas to New York City. And when I left, I thought, I'm a big city girl in a small town. And then I got there and I said, no, I'm a small town girl. It was such a culture shock. And so for you, Delcina, and then also to you afterwards, Angela, was there a culture shock that made you kind of evaluate your own identity?
I've always been one just to love to experience different things. I don't have I love New York. I mean, I think it's one of the greatest cities in the world, but I've been to a lot of great cities. So to come back and say New York is a great city, because I have been to, like Paris and London and in Italy. It's just, but I think it's just how you experience. You have to be open. You have to be open. You have to know that everybody there is on their journey too. I'm on my journey, and it is not any better than anybody else's journey. It's mine, and I just soak it all in, because it's an education, and I think more people should travel. I think when people don't travel, then how can you know what's around the corner if you don't go around the corner,
Absolutely. And for you, Angela, I'm interested in hearing your response to that for this film, but then also for yourself.
Okay, thank you. Well, I also agree. I love to travel. I love to travel internationally as well. So Delcina and I have a lot in common, we found out through this process. So it's been super fun to get to know her and hear her story. But she's also been able to elevate my own awareness because she's lived such a rich life, and we view the world through a similar lens. So that's been a real gift to me. But as far as the travel and the discovery in the film, I think, we all go through different iterations of our maturity and our growth, right? And we may grow from a sort of a naive, ambitious young person into someone who's now a wife and mother and trying to redefine that role and that identity. And maybe that's where we stay. But in Delcina's case, her marital situation provided her kind of the pressure that she needed to move her forward and reconnect with her career and her aspirations and her ambitions. And so that process, as you heard her say, like for her, self-discovery and newness gives her that sense of energy and purpose. So we really start to see that character transition once she starts rediscovering her path. And that's the goal anyway with how I am trying to really elevate and integrate her exceptional experiences into that journey.
I love stories about world travelers, right? But I also appreciate that two things are the greatest catalysts for forward movement: love and conflict, right? And I think we have both of those here in this story. I want to go ahead and move into opera, because I get the sense just from the way that we see opera today is that it's not largely open to Black singers, even today.
The thing about opera is that it takes a bit of what can I say? I mean, it's like I was looking. It was so funny. I was looking at the Cassius Clay saga last night that was on PBS. I don't know, a couple of months ago, and I hadn't looked at it. And you have to work. I mean, there are things that you have to do. I mean, you cannot just get up and start singing. And I think that a lot of times, my mother, and that's what the other thing I have to talk to Angela about is because she was not a gospel singer. She was, she loved spirituals, which were a little bit more toward, because Marian Anderson and all the people used to do classical music, and they would always end with a group of spirituals, and she loved spirituals. So when I was coming up, I played the piano. I thought I was going to be a pianist, and I'd play for her, and she. So it's like I had this education of a different kind of music. And I was at the Methodist church, so they didn't sing gospel. So, I mean, they sang hymns. And so it was, I grew up with a different kind of education. And so when I teach students. People now they don't want to go to, they don't want to pay the money. They don't want to come every week and take a lesson. They don't want to do their breath exercises. They don't, I mean, people just want to get up and sing, and you can't, it's not possible. It's just not possible. You can't do it with opera, So,
I understand. I wanted to just get up and be Joan Sutherland and Leontine Price.
Nope.
No training.
No way. No way. Yeah. So there's a process that you have to do. And with last night, when I was looking at Cassius Clay, I mean, the times that he actually got out and ran 4 miles a day, that he did his breath thing, he won those, he didn't have any trouble in the ring. But if you don't do it, if he didn't do it, he had problems, and it's the same thing with anything, really. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, especially with the that's why I don't sing now, because I don't have the stamina.
Yeah. So somebody asked me recently what have been the challenges, and when you get deep and honest, a lot of the challenges are internal. Do I really want to commit the time? Do I really want to, but there are also external challenges. And so one thing that the reason why I brought it up is because an external challenge, of course, there are race-based challenges, all kinds of challenges. Mm-hmm. But when you are pursuing a dream, there has to come a point when right? When you know what your gifts are, you know what your goals are, and you know who you are. I want to ask you about that moment for you, or that time for you. When did you know?
I'm not sure. I think I played it along as I went along, I mean, I would audition and, but I never had, I was thinking about that a couple of weeks ago. I don't remember ever being, when I didn't make it. It's like, sometimes you're too skinny, you're too tall, you're too fat, you're too, whatever, it's not, and I didn't take it personally when I would audition. And I just go to all the auditions. And then that's how it worked out. So I'm not sure if that.
And that's okay.
Yeah, I just kept doing my thing. I just kept, doing my breath exercises. I used to get up every morning and walk from 95th and Riverside Drive to 72nd and Broadway and back home. So that was something I did. I remember I did that for about 2 years. And when I was in New York, because I was going back and forth working. And it's just something that you have to, it's just, what is it? I mean, it's just something you have to do,
So you took solace in the work itself. Go ahead, Angela.
The work itself. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
That's just what I was going to say, not to interrupt, but I think her commitment to the work and the process put that intention forward every day, that this is where her path to sing, to be a singer. And even if this audition didn't go well, that's okay, because the next one is coming. And she just has had this unwavering faith throughout her life that the opportunity will present itself. She just had to be ready for it. And so it just kind of fueled this discipline. So when the opportunity did come, she was ready every time. So I think that's the beauty of it. I see you anyway, Delcina, as being so grounded in yourself and your beliefs that there's a certainty to your practice.
Yeah, I think sometimes I don't have that certainty. Sometimes I think, oh, why is it happening? But then I just, settle in.
I've never seen that from you.
Okay, because I think that's what happens with people. I think people, okay, I want to have a car, say, it's got to be tomorrow. You have to
give it time.
Yeah, give it time. You can't just say that it's going to happen like that. It doesn't happen like that. Nothing happens like that. I don't think, like losing weight, it's not like you're going to lose, I see this pill that they're touting now, you lose 1 pound a night, I mean, which I hope that's true, but, you just have to see, wait and see.
And see, right. Yeah. And for you, Angela, like you are a prolific woman, you're a filmmaker, you're also a counselor who has worked with some world-renowned brands. And was there a moment for you in your life, in your career, when you say, yeah, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing?
Actually, yes, this project, it just was so clear to me because I've walked away from my law practice to do this because I believe so much in Delcina's journey. And I also believe so much in the timing of our paths crossing. Her resilience and her faith has triggered those qualities that have been laying dormant in myself. And so I've been able to really grow into a place of certainty on my own journey for knowing her. So it's, I just, sometimes you'll see throughout the pitch deck and the treatment about serendipity or about divine guidance or faith-based sort of instances. And I think that is so much a part of both of our belief systems that for me, the coalescence of all of these elements coming together just felt like provided me a lot of clarity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You knew what I was going to say.
Yeah.
All right. So I think I'm talking to a couple of soul sisters here. Hold on. So I had a question about, and I just want to get in because it's actually something I'm personally interested in about your journey, Delcina, and foreign language. We know that opera typically is in Italian and French and German. Did you know any of these languages before singing? Did you have to learn, or was it just kind of studying that particular piece?
Well, when I was in Kansas and I changed my major from being a pianist, I thought I was going to be a pianist, but I didn't realize that these pianists practice 6 and 7 hours a day. I mean, I practiced maybe 2 or something like that, but not, So, and then I went in, I didn't really discover my singing till my senior year in high school. And when I got to college, then I took, voice was a minor. So I went into my voice teacher and she said, what's wrong? And I said, well, I got to change my major. I can't be a pianist. She says, well, you shouldn't be a pianist anyway. You should have a voice major. And I thought, oh, okay, sure, why not? I was enjoying it. I mean, it was something new. And so that's how I started. And so in changing to a voice major, I had to take 1 year of Italian, 1 year of German, and 1 year of French. So I just barely I was taking French my senior year because I didn't start until my sophomore year. But it was enough to get me through the languages that I had to use for the classical music. And then when I finally did get to when I won the San Francisco auditions, they had the part of the prize was that I got to be in the Western Opera, and they had a diction teacher who would come in every week, took an hour and a half. She taught the Italian language. So I did that every day for, 4, 5, 6 months, I think it was. She came in every hour and a half a day, And I remember singing the Bohème one time, and this guy came up afterward and he started speaking Italian, and he thought I knew how to speak Italian. So my Italian must have been pretty good. So it takes that dedication to, but I really, and I took German, but I really didn't learn the German the way that feel is a different thing than just translating and singing that word, you know. When I went to Germany, I had to speak with the Germans and then had to sing that. It's a totally different experience, you know, so that's it.
You know, what I'm hearing right now is the word dedication. Something I like to do is follow the fun. You may not have been willing to practice 6 hours on the piano, but you put it all in for the voice, for the classic. Yes. Yes. So
yeah. It just turned around. Right.
and so let's kind of shift into the era, and I'll address Angela first with this. So a great deal of the pioneering career happened during the 60s, which was a time of civic and social energy. Just how are you going to capture that and the music at the same time?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I'm very fortunate because Delcina reconnected with some of her friends from Kansas around this specific time of her life, and started attending the LA chapter of the church that she grew up in. And through that reconnection, she was able to re-engage with a lot of her friends, and also sing when Martin Luther King came to visit a couple of times. So there's a great opportunity to really highlight not only what was happening during the civil rights movement, but her kind of how her path was able to really invigorate and tie into some of those key moments in history.
We just celebrated MLK Day. Ms. Delcina, can you talk about meeting him, being in his presence and performing for him?
Well, it was he came to Los Angeles, the minister of our church, who was Brookins, and he was, at that time, he was the, what do you call it, I guess, important person as far as civil rights were concerned in LA. And so that's why Martin Luther came, you know, to raise money, you know. So what he did, what happens is that the church, it was a church service. And I just got up and sang, I can't remember, I think it was Inflammatus. You know, that's one of those songs that churches love to sing, you know, it's by Rossini. And I think, and then he just got up and just sort of talked about my singing, you know, this angel singing or something like that. I wish I had, you know, and at the time they recorded everything. And do you know, I didn't buy that tape. I mean, it's just, that's one thing that I don't have too many things in my life that I would love to, you know, have a
do again.
Yeah, but that's one thing that I really wish I had. I don't know why I didn't. I just didn't.
Well, you know, I think we all agree. I've gotten to listen to recordings of you, and just amazing, just heavenly, your voice. Yeah. So I think, oh yeah. So this is all very deserving. And then also in being a pioneer, right? This is what we're saying about you, looking at your life and what you've done. But at the time, were you thinking, yes, I'm a pioneer? Or was it like, I'm just getting things done, I'm just living my life, I'm chasing my dream?
Got it. Yeah. Because I at that point, it wasn't until I got to LA that I really started singing opera. I mean, I was an older singer. I mean, most opera singers start when they're maybe 18 or 19, you know, but I didn't start until in my 20s, late 20s at that. And I just, it was just something new, and I loved it. So, and the people that I was involved with, Madame Kowalski and Madame Lehman and people like that, were just, I mean, they were these women, they were strong women, you know, and they just inspired me. So I went with it.
And you went with it. You went right to the Academy Awards. So Dr. Zhivago, right? There was an Academy Award.
That though, I didn't get to go to that opening because what I did was my teacher was called, and they needed a singer for Dr. Zhivago, and they needed someone right then because I think it was on a Friday, and the opening was on a Monday, and so they had to have all of this together by then, And so I went in, and I had just been at the opera, and I had learned how to if you said the language to me, I could just write it down the way I heard it. I didn't have to know the language. So I went in, and they needed someone to sing this Russian, which that's something I had never had, and I said, okay, say it for me and I'll write it down the way I hear it. And then I sing it that way. And I did it. They thought I was going to have to be there all night the next day. And we just did it in 2 hours, and I was done.
Wow. And that song made it to the soundtrack.
Yeah, it's on the soundtrack. You hear it. If you don't, you have to hear it within the first 10 minutes, I think. It's something like that.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand. The song is on the soundtrack. The soundtrack did win an Academy Award, but you did not get to attend the ceremony.
Didn't get to attend that. No, I didn't get to attend that because that was the next Monday. And I didn't even know that they were doing it. I mean, it was just something that came out of the blue, another serendipity thing that was there,
Wow.
I didn't even know, and it was after that, and it was years before I heard it again. I didn't even hear it. I got money for it as residuals, but I didn't follow through. You know what I mean? It wasn't a serendipity moment.
So Angela, how will you address that dynamic? Because being on the soundtrack that wins an Academy Award, but not being at the ceremony, we're going to assume that it was racially inspired, that maybe she wasn't invited, but she's saying she just kind of didn't follow through. It was like, I did my thing and let it ride, So how will it be treated in the...
I don't think they thought anything about that. I mean, I think they were just trying to get the film finished, and Jar, I never knew how to pronounce his name, the composer of the music. He was just flabbergasted, and I remember him saying, we'll give you whatever you want. What do you want? And instead of me saying, put my name on the book, I didn't know, first time I'd ever done anything like that. So I didn't know the, protocol, but that's okay. I still get residuals from that. How many years ago was that? 40.
Hey, that's good.
Back in 64, I think it was, or something like that.
65.
65? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I think that Delcina has a terrific perspective. She's able to keep things in perspective and just keep moving, and often gives people the benefit of the doubt. I do think that I ponder and consider if she would have been treated the same if she'd been a white singer, because she did deserve to be mentioned, and she was deserving of that credit. So, even though it may not have been an intentional slight, I do think that it's worth noting that she wasn't given that credit. It was, she did come in at a pinch. She was helping out, even though it was her first time doing it. It was not their first time doing it. And so somebody was there and could have looked out for her a little bit in that situation. So
if I had gone through an agent, it probably would have, but it was just a they were having a problem, and they didn't have anybody who could sing it or because they had a choir there. So somebody could have sung it. I mean, so it's a hymn or something. I don't know. I'm not sure of the history of the music. I never looked back at it.
No, she didn't. She just let it. She just continued to go on and continue to study and sing and stay focused on moving forward, which is really quite tremendous, I think. your momentum and your ability to focus forward, Delcina, is really quite inspiring.
Oh,
Agreed. Agreed. I love that, being able to keep it pushing, you know, because that's what we have to do. We can't, frequently we hear stories of people who let those external factors bog them down, but you got to keep moving. You got to keep going. Yeah. So another thing.
My next life, I'll do that.
You've been successful in that in this life. Absolutely.
I learned that lesson.
So another thing that I think is incredible about what you've accomplished is the career, notable career, but also simultaneously with marriage and motherhood and marriage, and having those two things running concurrently. We have a lot of conversations about women in entertainment or pursuing their careers. Do you have any words?
It's very difficult. If you know most of the people in the opera world, now the men are different because they're married to women, the women take care of the home. Most of the women that are very famous have not married, or they don't have. They might have gotten married, but they don't have children. So it's a very difficult thing, because in the opera world, if you're not associated with a house, which at the time was that you had to go to Germany, you had to go to France or Italy or Austria, and you just stay there. Then it's then you could have a family. But most of your, if you look at Leontine Price, Grace Bonne-Marie, Shirley Verrett, those are your three top Black. They were married. I think Leontine was married for about 2-3 years, but no children. Shirley Verrett was married not very long, but no children. And as long as because it's very difficult. That's all I can say, because you have to try a lot, and then this little person is here, or however many people that you have, and either you have to just put them someplace and then just not, which is something I couldn't do that. So
yes, Brian Stevenson is your son, and he is also co-founder of Sheena May and co-producer on this project. And so I would say, just looking at how he's come out, you did your best, and it was good enough. You know what I'm saying? I want to ask you, Angela, how will that aspect of her life, that balancing act, what we call a balancing act, be depicted on screen? Because I'm a mother. So many mothers, we know motherhood is not easy in and of itself, but then with a prestigious career like this.
Yes. I've also been a single mother most of my life. So that was an area that Delcina and I could talk about pretty freely. I think the bond between Delcina and Brian is so strong. There's so much love between mother and son there, that it really helps her stay focused, I think, on her goal, because initially she wants to be able to provide for her son independently. And she goes back to a path where she really feels that she's going to be successful. And so as doors start opening up for her, it's wonderful, because it provides some independence. But at the same time, the career path is so demanding that she's, really dependent on some additional support. And that's why the serendipity, or her community of women, comes into focus so sharply here. She reconnected with the church during this journey, and an old friend, Mother Young, a house mother from KU, who ends up stepping in and helping with Brian so she can go to audition, so she can study with vocal professionals. And even when she wins the San Francisco Opera Scholarship, Mother Young moves with them. So during those grueling hours of study and rehearsal, she's got this stable force there, still making sure that Brian has that feeling of family and stability. So it's just such a beautiful way that this community of women has come in, the people in her life, to help her succeed. And she doesn't have to sacrifice the bond with her son. She knows that he's safe and loved. At the same time, they're able to really still stay connected. During her journey, he's still there. He's still a part of it and gets to witness this transformation. Mm-hmm. It's really quite beautiful, I think. So,
yeah.
Yes, that's a sign of the times.
Without all the women in my life, it's really important.
Yes. Back in the day, we could come home and every neighbor knew you arrived. We knew all their names, called them Mr. and Mrs. Yes, we did. Absolutely.
Right. Exactly.
Yes. So I'm just going to ask you the business questions real quick before we head out. So what impact do you hope that this story has on cinema? And let's start with you, Angela.
Okay. Well, the reason that Brian, Delcina, and I really wanted to form a company is we felt that this film could really inspire a lot of people and help them to, well, I guess not even help, but just be more of a positive energy. Put some uplifting stories out in the world to really inspire people and show what's possible and the importance of history and the people in history that have paved a way for us that we may not even know about. And so for me, being part of a project that puts this beautiful story out into the world is an absolute gift. So I hope it's inspiring to others, I guess, in short.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I agree. Growing up, we listened to Pavarotti, we listened to Placido Domingo, we listened to all these male singers, but we did not know. I was an adult before I even heard of Leontine Price. I only heard of Kathleen Battles because she did a duet with Janet Jackson. Okay. So so the reputation of Black women in opera, how do you anticipate this story will open that up for you, Delcina?
You know what? I think that a lot of times we get the idea, because after I came back from Europe, I started teaching, and I had some very talented students, and so I said, I think you could have a career. When I say career, I don't mean that they're going to be top stars. I just mean that they'll be doing something that they love. That's one thing I can say. I always loved singing, and I loved what I did. I love what I do. And I think a lot of times people, I had mothers say, "Oh no, she has to get a job. She has to get a job, so she can have whatever it is that they think a job.
Be a teacher, be a secretary, yes."
Yeah, and I just think that it's so important to me to do what you love, and if you love it enough, I think that something comes, and you believe in what you love. Something comes out. I don't know where it comes from. It's the energy or something comes to you, and you can enjoy yourself. You don't have to, it's not like you have to make millions of dollars, it has nothing to do with money. It has to do with how you feel,
So I think that is the perfect button on this conversation. Follow the fun, be disciplined, and do what you love. I love it. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to leave with us today?
Just go out there and explore, and be open to, be compassionate, You know, you have to, love has to be in your life. You have to know that and know that each person has his own calling, and your calling is a special to you, and that you should do what is your calling and not what people think your calling is. You know, in your heart and soul what your calling is and what makes you happy and what brings joy to your life.
I want to thank you both for sitting down with us in Mama Film for the Sundance Film Festival. And just thank you so much for sharing your story. And I can't wait to see it on the screen.
Thank you.
Thank you.